All right, what's going on, y'all? So today we're going to talk about why athletes, and specifically bodybuilders and strength athletes, should implement fasting into their routine and their protocol. Over the last 2 years, I've been experimenting with fasting of many different types. So one, I'm an Orthodox Christian, so we fast over half the days of the year. Now with that fasting, that's typically going to be just fasting for meat, eating vegan food. But with that, I also have been experimenting with multi-day water fasting. So literally not eating any food and only having water for 3 or so days. I've been experimenting with OMAD, only eating one meal a day. And then I've done intermittent fasting and talked about that quite a bit on this channel for quite some time. And with this, I have several clients that through my intermittent fasting videos, all that have come to me and they have wanted to implement fasting into their protocols. And I've seen some pretty profound results with several of these clients doing this. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. There's two specific reasons that many people don't talk about in the fasting community that can be specifically helpful and beneficial to bodybuilders and especially strength athletes that size and strength is a goal. So the very first thing here is with bodybuilding, with being a strength athlete, food is in getting enough food and fuel is such a big part of this. A lot of bodybuilding is literally force feeding. I've talked many times that through my career as a professional bodybuilder, to where, at 5'8", I went from starting at 157 pounds as a ultra runner and went all the way up to 260 pounds at my peak. Most of that time, I'd say 80% of that time, those 5-6 years, was spent force feeding, meaning literally I would wake up full, not wanting to eat, and every single meal was like punishment trying to get it down. And that's what it took to really, really put on that size. With that, over time, your gut health, your digestion absolutely takes a hit to where it's harder and harder and harder to get the food in, and you're not even as efficient at taking in those nutrients that would help you grow. So a good example of this is one of my off seasons that it took me up to 245 pounds. I was forcing food so hard that I literally saw, even though I was staying relatively lean, and insulin sensitivity was okay managed, I was seeing my nutrient partitioning was not as efficient. I wasn't putting on gains as efficiently. Compared to the next off season, I was eating more food and having meal timing be a little bit better, and I was growing at a much more efficient rate. Whole point is that sometimes it's not just calories in, calories out, and slamming that food. So this is where fasting can play a big role here. So I've done this with many of my clients that like to implement fasting. This isn't for everybody because in the bodybuilding world especially, food is king, and many bodybuilders are scared to even try experimenting with something like fasting because thinking about not eating kind of sends them into a panic attack. But I've had several clients that have wanted to try this. And I've got one client specifically that, as we started pushing up food, he very, very, very quickly got full. And I could see in his body he was gaining some inflammation as well. So we decided to implement a 48-hour water fast where he didn't eat anything for 48 hours. After those 48 hours, we had our training session the next day. This is also a client that's not only an online client, he's also an in-person client of mine. So I train with him one-on-one. He had one of his best training sessions immediately following the 48-hour water fast. So one, he was able to kind of clear up his digestion, his gut health. But then two, it really, really dropped inflammation. And that is such a big part to what people do with bodybuilding, athletics of any kind, strength athletics. If you got high inflammation, it doesn't matter if you're taking in a ton of food, if you are pushing drugs, whatever it is, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're making things a lot harder. Whereas if you were to bring down inflammation, clear inflammation, things work a lot efficiently. Meaning the next few days after he did the 48-hour water fast, his strength actually ticked up. And then this is the beautiful thing. This is where I highly recommend, you don't need to do this very frequently, but I highly recommend doing a 24 to 72 hour water fast If you get to the point to where when you're pushing up food, it feels like you can't push food anymore, you are absolutely force feeding, do a fast, because then right after that, his appetite was out of control, and we were able to then really, really efficiently push up food, and he was able to get the gains, the progressive overload, everything we wanted from that food. This is something that if I could go back in time when I was competing as a bodybuilder, I would have absolutely implemented. Rather than just constantly forcing the food down, forcing more, I would have done a little bit of reset with a water fast, and that would have then helped me have more runway within that off season, that growth phase, and be able to take in food and take in food more efficiently. After those few day water fasts, your gut gets that reset and it takes in the food so efficiently, and then you get more out of it, and then you're able to push more food because you do have that reset, rather than digging yourself in a hole with the force feeding and then continuing to just stay in that hole and dig yourself even further down. A water fast can be a really good reset for that. The second big point, and this is one that is kind of more near and dear to my heart. I have transitioned, over the last several years since I retired from bodybuilding, from being so just purely performance focused to, performance and health focused. It's not me trying to be like, Brian Johnson and, live as long as possible. But at the same time, I know I did damage to my body during the time bodybuilding. And that is the thing with strength athletics, and specifically with bodybuilding. And I don't care whether you're a natural bodybuilder, especially an enhanced bodybuilder. Bodybuilding is not a sport that is really health and longevity focused. Back in the day, back in like Arnold's era, 70s, 80s, a lot of the bodybuilders then talked about eating clean food in a world that, people really didn't know about that. So there was a healthy aspect to it. I'm not saying we are the unhealthiest people in the world, but what we do with bodybuilding, trying to put on the most size possible, to do that, eating the most food possible. Every single time we step foot in the gym, we are training balls to the wall, very intense. These are things that, kind of go directly against what kind of the biohacking and longevity community preaches. Now, of course, we have our goals. We've got our performance goals. And so this is where there's kind of a balancing act of this. But the whole point is what we do with bodybuilding is not exactly extending our life. It's not exactly extending our health. So what fasting can do, multi-day water fasting can help mitigate this to an extent. Like I brought up the example with one of my clients, it will absolutely drive down inflammation. And that is such a big part of with bodybuilding, especially modern bodybuilding. Bodybuilders are constantly living inflamed. I see it all the time. And that's one thing I try to do with my coaching, is how to help competitive bodybuilders do this in a healthier lifestyle. So the reason I say that this applies to both natural and enhanced bodybuilders is, with a natural bodybuilder, you're doing the same thing with food. You're having to force food up, to put on that muscle. You're eating, 6-7 times a day. This is not how humans were intended to eat. They've done many studies, and I've talked many times about the benefits of intermittent fasting, autophagy. I told you I do 1 meal a day many days. I'll go ahead and skip a day of eating completely, then go to 2 meals a day. I play around with this. One, tracking how it affects my body, but then two, really living and kind of intuitively. Now with that, I'm still getting enough food to perform and hit my performance goals. The point is though, is if you are constantly doing what it takes to be a competitive bodybuilder, you're not exactly helping your lifespan. And so that's where fasting can be used as a medicine to help mitigate some of the negative impacts of bodybuilding, of eating all the time, trying to drive body weight up constantly, not giving your digestion a break, not bringing down inflammation. And then this is especially important if you are on PEDs. If you're on PEDs, this is where inflammation usually goes up quite quickly and it stays high, and fasting can help bring that down. Now, this is where I'm recommending for bodybuilders and strength athletes to occasionally, and this could be, depending on the cadence you like, it could be once every 4 months. It could be once every 3 months. It could be once a month. I've got one client that he loves doing a 24 to 48 hour water fast every single month, still seeing incredible gains month after month. But he enjoys this. He loves how great he feels. His blood work looks fantastic. Point is you can kind of come up with your own cadence, but don't go ahead and discount, fasting just because you always got to slam the food. You're not going to lose any muscle tissue taking a few days off from eating. Your body will clean itself up, and then you'll be able to continue on more efficiently, more healthy, and all that. Now, today we're talking about specifically multi-day water fasting. So, taking 24 to 72 hours. Some people like to do even longer than that. For bodybuilding purposes, I would say up to 72 hours. That's where I've seen my clients have the most success and not cut into their muscle tissue at all, and actually quite the opposite. They usually come back from that and have strength gains. But after that, that's where, for bodybuilding purposes, it's going to kind of be like, one step back for two steps forward. If you don't want to have any step back, I would say up to 72 hours of a water fast. Now, with that, I've said that I also do intermittent fasting. This is what I do every single day. I've been doing this for probably the last 1.5 to 2 years now. This is how I keep my body composition in control. I feel healthy. I just don't like eating. I think it comes from my time as a competitive bodybuilder forcing food. I prefer to wake up and go till about 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon before I eat anything. I'll just have water and maybe 1 or 2 cups of coffee. And then I'll go ahead and break my fast and break it with very, very, very healthy, nutrient-dense foods. And we can talk about this in future videos of what that means to where you can get even more out of your performance physique with even a little bit less calories. That's where this is not a calories in, calories out. When you have your gut running full speed very efficiently and you are feeding it with very, very, very nutrient-dense foods, you can get more out of less food. And then you're going to keep your body composition even tighter anyway. But the point is, we can talk in future videos about, intermittent fasting, 1 meal a day, and kind of these other fasting strategies I implement. But the whole point of this video is I recommend to not count out multi-day water fasting. Even if it's just up to 24 hours, this can be something you implement occasionally, and it can absolutely help you with your bodybuilding goals to where you put on more muscle mass, you gain strength, and you're healthier in the process. That's the whole point, I'm hoping I can get to the point where I can help some of you out there do bodybuilding and strength athletics in a healthier way. There's a healthy way to do this to where you get huge, performance metrics out of this. Your physique looks fantastic, but you're doing this in a healthier way than what the majority of people out there are doing. So if you got any questions with this, let me know down below. I'll be talking on this more, coming up. But other than that, please smash that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. All glory to God. God bless you, and have a great rest of your day.